In the rural heart of Bavaria, Germany, lies a farmstead with a name that has become synonymous with terror: Hinterkaifeck. This small, isolated property, surrounded by dense forests and miles of farmland, was home to a family of 6. What happened there in the spring of 1922 would baffle investigators and haunt the region for over a century. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, all 6 residents of the Hinterkaifeck farm were brutally murdered with a mattock, a tool resembling a small pickaxe. The family members were discovered days later, their bodies concealed within the barn and house. The killings were savage, the motives unclear, and the perpetrator never found. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most chilling and unsolved crimes. The Gruber family who lived at Hinterkaifeck consisted of Andreas Gruber, a harsh and domineering patriarch in his 60s, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabrielle, age 35, and Victoria's 2 children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph. The family lived in relative isolation, with few visitors or neighbors. Their existence, though modest, was marred by whispers of scandal and tension. Andreas Gruber was known to be abusive, both physically and emotionally, to his family. It was widely rumored that he had an incestuous relationship with his daughter, Victoria, a claim supported by the fact that Joseph, the youngest member of the household, was believed to be Andreas' son, as well as his grandson. Despite the rumors, the family kept largely to themselves, tending to the farm and avoiding outsiders. But in the months leading up to their deaths, strange and unsettling events began to disturb the quiet life at Hinterkaifeck. 6 months prior to the killings, the family maid abruptly quit her job, claiming the house was haunted. She spoke of strange noises coming from the attic at night and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Although the Grubers dismissed her fears as superstitious nonsense, her departure was only the beginning of a series of bizarre occurrences. Shortly before the murders, Andreas told neighbors about strange footprints he had found in the snow leading from the woods to the house, but none leading back. He also mentioned hearing footsteps in the attic and finding unfamiliar items around the property, such as a newspaper, that no one in the family subscribed to. Despite these alarming signs, Andreas did not report them to the police. Instead, he chose to investigate the noises himself, but found nothing. Another chilling incident occurred just days before the murders. One of the family's keys went missing. Andreas, however, seemed to dismiss this as a minor inconvenience, not realizing that it was a harbinger of the horror to come. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, an unknown assailant lured each member of the family to the barn one by one and bludgeoned them to death with a mattock. It's believed that the killer used animal sounds or some other method to coax the victims out of the house. The bodies of Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and young Cecilia were later found stacked on top of one another in the barn, covered with hay. Inside the house, Joseph was murdered in his crib, and the family's new maid, Maria Baumgartner, who had arrived that very day to replace the one who had quit, was killed in her room. The brutality of the murders shocked even seasoned investigators. The blows to the victims were so severe that some of their skulls were shattered, yet there was no sign of a struggle. The crime wasn't discovered until April 4th, when neighbors, concerned by the family's uncharacteristic silence and the lack of activity on the farm, decided to investigate. They found the barn doors locked and, upon entering, stumbled upon the horrifying scene. The house itself was eerily quiet, save for the sound of animals. The cows had been milked, and the livestock had been fed. This led investigators to conclude that the killer had remained on the property for several days after committing the murders, living among the bodies. The police faced immediate challenges. The crime scene was contaminated by curious neighbors who had trampled through the barn and house before authorities arrived. Despite this, investigators began piecing together what little evidence they could find. No valuables were stolen, ruling out robbery as a motive. Strangely, the missing house key was never recovered. The lack of fingerprints and clear evidence suggested that the killer was meticulous and familiar with the layout of the farm. Even more chilling, young Cecilia appeared to have survived the initial attack. Strands of her hair were found in her hands, suggesting she had pulled it out in agony before succumbing to her injuries. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged about the identity of the killer and their motive. 1. A personal vendetta, given the family's reputation and Andres' abusive nature. Some speculate that the murders were an act of revenge by someone close to the family. Victoria's rumored relationships, including one with a local man named Lorenz Schlittenbauer, have also fueled theories of jealousy or betrayal. 2. A vagrant or stranger. Others believe the killer was an opportunistic drifter who stumbled upon the farm and decided to commit the murders. However, this theory is undermined by the killer's apparent familiarity with the property. 3. A supernatural explanation. Some have pointed to the maid's claims of hauntings and the strange occurrences leading up to the murders as evidence of a paranormal force at work. While this theory lacks evidence, it has captured the imagination of many. 4. A military connection. The precision and methodical nature of the crime have led some to speculate that the killer had military training, possibly a soldier returning from World War I. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most infamous unsolved cases. The farmstead itself was demolished in 1923, and a memorial now stands in its place. Over the years, the case has inspired books, documentaries, and endless speculation. The horror of Hinterkaifeck lies not only in the brutality of the crime, but also in the unanswered questions it left behind. Who was the shadowy figure in the attic? Why did the killer stay on the property after the murders? And why was this family targeted in such a horrific way? As time passes, the truth seems increasingly out of reach, but the mystery of Hinterkaifeck continues to haunt those who hear its story.